of default, RTG was required to submit to the city a plan and schedule for the remediation of its breaches under the agreement.
According to the city, RTG submitted an unsatisfactory plan and schedule to rectify the contract breaches and said they don't have confidence in their subcontractors or ability to properly manage and lead an appropriate response. Now, the city proposing to go through a dispute resolution process and is not ruling out sending lawyers to court to ask a judge to weigh in. It also appears one person got fired, the city asking RTG to replace an Alstom employee who was a manager of vehicle maintenance. With all this, there's still no timeline for a reopening plan of the Confederation line. Chris Curry's City News.
City News time, 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, some fog patches for some, otherwise sun and cloud today, the high 21 degrees. Tonight, a few clouds, some more fog patches, 8 for the low, and tomorrow, sun and cloud, another warm day, 21. That's the high today, 21.
And right now, 10 degrees in Ottawa, 7 degrees in Smith Falls. Ottawa Fire Service Water Rescue Team called out to the Ottawa River this morning, a swimmer in distress. That was just off the Britannia Yacht Club. Crews rescued the swimmer and brought the person safely back to shore. A motorcycle rider is in life-threatening condition in hospital after a collision just after midnight. The rider was involved in a collision on Goulburn Side Road, and that closed a portion of the road for the investigation for about 8 hours. That was between Innovation and Key Rock. It opened just around 8 o'clock this morning. There was also a vehicle rollover near Carp and Richardson that knocked over a hydro pole. Now, Hydro One will be making repairs to that pole. That will lead to a power outage in the area. The company is right now determining the size of the outage. More than 30 national and provincial health organizations are putting their heads together, trying to find a way out of the stress that healthcare systems have been under for the past 18 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
At times, the COVID-19 pandemic and surges in infected patients have stretched hospital resources to their limits. And some hospitals, especially in Western Canada, are suffering right now in this fourth wave. Hardest hit has been intensive care wards and staffing levels. The large doctors and nurses groups, the Canadian Medical Association and the Canadian Nurses Association, held an emergency summit last night to discuss how to address growing surgical backlogs, staffing shortages, and the well-being of frustrated and exhausted healthcare workers. Karen Rebo, the Canadian Press.
City News time, 9:03. Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expected to announce this morning the government is making COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory in federally regulated workplaces. That would include airplane and train passengers. One union executive believes even federal employees who work from home are going to have to be vaccinated in order to keep their jobs. Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada and other unions have been pushing to find out what kind of accommodations will be made for unvaccinated workers and what will happen to those who choose not to comply. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I am loving this October weather. We are on a weather win streak. I do think we're going to pay for it at some later date. This time last year, there were flakes of snow falling from the skies of Ottawa on the 26th of October. On the 26th day of October, like 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now. I wonder if light rail will be up and running by then. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Oh, it's a big one in the news game today, and you are in good hands, my friends. Coming up, all the latest on the light rail saga. Councilor Catherine Mckenney is standing by. The councilor is a member of the Transit Commission, and they will tell us what they can about what happened at this meeting yesterday. This behind-closed-door meeting, where some councilors, members of the FEDCO committee, were briefed on the next steps from a legal point of view. The legalese of our light rail system. Some councilors, some transit commissioners are calling this theater. It's nothing but theater. Theater that doesn't really do much to get the trains back on the tracks, does nothing to make sure the trains will ever stay on the tracks, and does nothing to restore the public's confidence in what is a troubled and strained public transit system. What it will do is drive the city's legal bill higher. Legal bill that is now in excess of $100 million since all of this began so many, many years ago. So that is coming up in a few minutes from now. Cover up, cover up. I see that's a phrase that's starting to be thrown around on social media now. Councilor Menard is turning on that phrase, cover up. It's the LRT cover up. And Councilor Mckenney, as you know, calling for a judicial inquiry into the whole affair from start to finish. Although I doubt that motion will get very far just knowing the dynamics of this city council. But that is not going to stop them from trying. Hey, this is always the place to score your political fix. We do that every Wednesday morning with a pair of brilliant political strategists, and this morning, two of the best in town. Kate Harrison, more on the right side of things. She's with Summa Strategies. Carl Belanger used to work for a guy named Jack Layton. He's the president of Traxion Strategies. Going to talk about everything that went down yesterday at the first caucus meeting for Conservative representatives following the election defeat and the calls from certain quarters for the resignation of Erin O'Toole as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. It appears as though Mr. O'Toole will live to fight another day. But does that mean he will live to fight another election, or will his next fight once again be with members of his own party? You know, and where is this party going? Right? Isn't that the big question? Is it headed in the right direction? Where is the Conservative Party going? It's like Erin O'Toole is trying to drag this party, kicking and screaming in one direction, and that direction is to the left. And many members of the base, if you will, for lack of a better term, the base, they don't want to move. They are content with where they are. But where they are is not a winning place to be. When they can't win with women, when they can't win with younger voters, new Canadians, and in the cities. Where is this party going? Is it headed in the right direction with the right leader? We'll get into all of it. We'll also talk about the politics of vaccine mandates and Trudeau's trip to Tofino. And will a walk in the sand eventually become a walk in the snow? And as well, the New Democrats. Seriously, I've put this to Jagmeet Singh right here on this show before. I've asked Mr. Singh, what is the difference, Mr. Singh, in the here and now, seriously, on public policy? What is the difference now between a New Democrat and a liberal in the year 2021? What's the difference? On climate change, on childcare, social welfare, Indigenous issues, women's issues, pick your issue. Any issue. What's the difference? Now, the Democrats tell me, and Mr. Singh has told me, Rob, it's the difference between words and action. Okay. Trudeau, oh, he's great with words. Action, not so much. And the Democrats, we're all about action. And that's the case that they tried to make to the voters in the most recent election campaign. But in the end, and for the second election campaign in a row, what did it get them? Well, it didn't get them very far. Yeah, the political fix. Yeah, I find it always very satisfying to score a political fix on a Wednesday morning right after the 9:30 news. Every morning here on the Rob Snow Show, we do the Talk Back Hour. It's 1 hour. And it's your hour. It's an hour just for you. Okay? And your opinions and your phone calls. Now, we could fill that hour with interviews and panel discussions. Okay? I could interview psychics for an hour every day. But we don't do that around here. We just set an hour aside for you. We pick some hot topics and we boot them around. I hope you will continue to take advantage of that hour at 750-1310 between 10 and 11 o'clock. This morning, rapid poll on what is going to be the biggest news story of the day. And what is that? Well, at 11 o'clock, as we've been reporting this morning here at City News, the Prime Minister is going to have a news conference. And he is going to announce his vaccine mandate for federal government workers. Front page, Globe and Mail this morning. Public servants who refuse vaccine will face unpaid leave. We are the mother of all government towns. We are the capital city. And this is a policy that will impact tens of thousands of people in Ottawa. And the policy, as you can see, has already been leaked to the media. Unless a government worker has a medical exemption, if they are not fully vaccinated, they will be put on unpaid leave. Unpaid leave. No paycheck from the employer, the government of Canada. Now, David has some audio here. Mr. Trudeau, you remember Mr. Trudeau talked big. This was his wedge during the election campaign against the Conservatives and against Aaron O'Toole. He had to do this.
And on vaccines, let's be clear. What Aaron O'Toole is planning is just wrong. He can't even demand that his own candidates get vaccinated. He's worried about protecting anti-vaxxers in his caucus. Mr. O'Toole is asking his candidates to hide their status from Canadians, with his candidates who aren't fully vaccinated campaigning inside seniors' homes. The mobs of anti-vaxxers, the far-right anti-vax wing of his own party. Even Doug Ford has said that he'll make vaccines mandatory. Mr. O'Toole, he's having to leave room for the anti-vaxxers. It just isn't right.
Okay, so it's time to put up or shut up, right, for him. He said he was going to do this, and now it looks as like he's at least going to try. Now, I think it's all headed to court. Several rounds, and likely many, many years of court battles will be fought on this issue. But Mr. Trudeau is ready to announce this morning, if you are not fully vaccinated against COVID-19, you will not be going back to work, and you will not be collecting a paycheck. You will be placed on unpaid, hear me, unpaid leave. Then you have the public broadcaster reporting this morning that 4 major unions at the city level are pushing back against the City of Ottawa's mandatory vaccination policy. City workers could also be placed on unpaid leave. They could even be fired if they refused to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The Transit Workers Union, ATU, is against that. CUPE, which represents a lot of municipal healthcare workers, if you can believe that, CUPE is grieving this policy too on charter grounds. So we're going to do a rapid poll during the talkback hour. We'll try to take as many calls as we can on this question. Do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker to be vaccinated against COVID-19 as a condition of employment? Yes or no? Yes, an employer has an obligation to provide a safe work environment for all employees, and that includes making sure all employees are vaccinated against COVID-19, or no, it is an infringement of worker rights, like conscience rights, like religious rights. I can all but guarantee you it will be settled eventually in the courts. But let's get a head start this morning on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are season, we have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on a time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise, and people. And for us, we have to be careful, you know, especially with the virus going on. Like, did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, you know, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You know, you can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was like thought it's gonna be like this. You know, earthquake might happen. We joke about it before. Think it might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive? That's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in the mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy because we have to shut down completely, you know, and this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online. Let's say t-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit. But when it comes to clothing, like it's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, he can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, I mean, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really want to shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You want to be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, you know? You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, you know, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at certain time, so I'm glad to do that.
Community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
There was a 3-hour closed-door session yesterday involving city councilors, senior staff, the city's legal team. It happened yesterday afternoon, and we have a clearer idea what it was all about. We have learned that the city has issued a notice of default to the Rideau Transit Group, meaning it is escalating. its legal dispute with RTG after 2 derailments in as many months. City Councilor Catherine Mckenney joins me this morning on City News. Good morning, Councilor.
Hi, good morning, Rob.
What is your reaction to this news?
Well, it's yet another notice of default, more legal disputes, more money, spent on legal battles, and still we don't have a train on a track in this city. Our transit is in crisis, so it's the least that can be done at this point to get RTG to accept responsibility for the issues that we're seeing on the rail line.
Okay. The least that can be done. So what more can be done?
Well, the problem with what's happening here is that, we sold our public infrastructure essentially to the lowest bidder, being RTG. And we have no real in-house experience, and expertise that can oversee that safe return to service. And not just the safe return to service, but ongoing. We also know that the issues from the last notice of default still are ongoing. So it goes back to, for sure, we have to ensure we have a safe return to service. We have to bring in as much expertise as we can to ensure that, this system gets fixed if it's fixable. But I still maintain that we've got to go back and find out why we got to where we are today. And that is the accountability that residents are demanding of us.
Some are calling this theater. Some transit commissioners, it's theater. But is it a necessary theater? Is this a step that the city must take if ultimately, and I know this is one of your goals, you would like to see the city get out of this contract with RTG, potentially bring it in-house if that is a possibility, and have the city maintain the train fleet just as we maintain a bus fleet for public transit. So is it not a necessity to go down this road here?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is the process that's in front of us. This is the process that we have available to us through the P3 agreement that we signed. So this is the necessary process. Again, I, as much as anyone, want to see that train operational. I want to see it running, consistently well. It is the only way to get our transit system out of crisis, to get people back onto buses, onto trains. So I, more than anyone, want to see that happen. I want to see the experts brought in. I want to see this thing fixed. But again, it's not good enough. We have spent $2.1 billion on a system that is consistently down. We've spent, a contingency fund of millions of dollars, millions in legal fees. We're in constant dispute with our quote-unquote private partners. And we need accountability. We need to know, what was the procurement process that got us to where we are today? What was in that bid? When we signed the contract, what was in the contract? And what questions were asked and what decisions were made all the way along until we launched this train without it being ready. And I think that it is hard to argue today that train was ready when it was launched in September of 2019.
Okay. So your motion for a judicial inquiry, when will that come to a vote for City Council?
The next council. So next Wednesday, it will come to a vote.
Next Wednesday?
Yes.
What sort of response have you had from your council colleagues? Everyone knows about the Watson Club and allies of the mayor and his ability to command a majority of the votes. What sort of response have you had from council colleagues?
Well, without naming names, I have had conversations with some of my colleagues who have got concerns and have reached out, and we've had good discussions. Whether I've been able to change their mind or not is, I don't know that today.
Right.
But we have had good discussions around what does this really mean and why is it necessary. It is completely separate from our path forward that we're looking at today. It is completely separate. It is bringing accountability to decisions that were made that got us a system that is dysfunctional. So I think those conversations have gone well. And, I mean, the mayor has publicly stated that he's not in favor of judicial inquiry.
Right.
And we know that, that opinion holds weight, at council. But I really am hoping that it's not my pressure. It's the public pressure.
Yes.
That's being brought to bear on all of us, myself included. People want answers.
Right, but on a judicial...
They want it fixed, but they want answers.
On a judicial inquiry, is this a line in the sand for you? Or would you accept some kind of watered-down motion or a compromise? Are you willing to accept some water with your wine, Councillor?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting question because... if you recall, at Transit Commission, I brought a motion asking for 2 task forces to be established. One with a path forward and one that would look back and essentially do what is being asked here. And that was denied. I don't know why. I thought that it was pretty reasonable, but a majority of the Transit Commission said no. So at that point, I have to wonder why. I have to wonder why people don't want answers, and I have to wonder what the secret is.
Right.
So at this point, no, I'm looking for a judicial inquiry. I think that we need the heft of a judge being able to ask questions, being able to ask for any and all documentation to come up with answers to how we got the system that we got today.
Okay. Thank you for your time, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Rob.
Nice to hear from you. Councillor Catherine Mckenney. This is City News.
in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Wednesday, October 6th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. In Smith Falls, 9. And here's what's making news this hour. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau expected to make COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory for employees in federally regulated workplaces by the end of the month. The Prime Minister calling a media briefing this morning to deliver on the promise he made right before the call of the election. The policy would also allow for anyone traveling by plane or train to have to be vaccinated. Ottawa Fire Service water rescue team was called out to the Ottawa River, a swimmer in distress this morning, just off the Britannia Yacht Club. In all the fog as well, crews did find the swimmer, rescued that person, and brought them back safely to shore. A vehicle rollover near Carp and Richardson Side Road knocked over a hydro pole. Hydro 1 will be making the repairs at some point today, and that is going to lead to a power outage in that area. Now, nothing showing up on their outage map at the moment. The company, though, is determining the area of the outage that will be needed for that replacement. City News Time 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time to score. Your political fix with Carl Belanger. He's the president of Traxion Strategies. Good morning, Carl.
Good morning, Rob.
And Kate Harrison is back, vice chair of Summa Strategies. Good morning, Kate Harrison.
Good morning, Rob Snow. Good morning, Carl Belanger.
Good to be with you, Kate.
Aaron O'Toole appears to be safe, at least for now. This was the Conservative leader yesterday.
Our caucus is fully united, and we're ready to get to work to fight for Canadians. I've supported the Reform Act since Michael Chong brought it in. I voted for it in 2015, 2019, and I encourage people to vote for it today. It's about making sure we are united as a caucus and focused on fighting for Canadians, which we will.
Kate Harrison, what is your reaction to the outcome of yesterday's caucus meeting?
Not particularly surprising. I think that the voices championing we change out the leader like people change their underwear are actually pretty few and far between. It does not mean that there's not room for reflection on what could have been done better during the campaign. And I think that it's going to be really important for caucus and the rest of members to see that the review process is a thorough one, and that a number of different voices are being consulted. I think that by putting the review of the campaign in the hands of James Cumming, who is a Conservative MP in Edmonton that very narrowly lost his seat to a Liberal MP, Randy Boisseneau, former Liberal MP. I think that that's actually a very good call. It was somebody who obviously went from a win to a loss. They can be pretty honest, I suspect, in their criticism of how things went down. So I think that that's the right thing to do. So I'm not surprised to see things play out the way they did yesterday, but I would not say that this means the end of the review and the consultation that's going to happen in the Conservative Party.
Yeah, and that individual is being applauded for losing gracefully, I should say. I should add that as well. So, Carl Belanger, same question. Your reaction to the outcome of yesterday's caucus meeting for Conservatives?
Well, I think it was good. I think, of course you have to think about what happened because you lost. But you still won the popular vote, and you still showed some promises. So, either you go with a incremental build strategy and you get your leader better known and you improve on what you did wrong and you build on the strength that you have, or you start from scratch again and you look for another savior. And, chances are you won't find one, and you'll be in the same position you are right now, just like you were when you dumped Andrew Scheer after the first try. So the key for the Conservatives is, how do you make your party more attractive to all those switch voters that hesitated and were maybe even scared of voting for you, despite the fact that they don't particularly like the Trudeau government?
Yeah, that's the meat and potatoes of it. I'd still like to nibble on the appetizer just for a little bit. Pierre Poilievre cornered coming out of this meeting yesterday. Let's play a little bit of the member from Carleton.
What do you think are some of the things the party needs to do differently to win in the next election?
We need to be the single strongest voice against the inflation tax. The single
right, off the leash and always on the attack. That is Pierre Poilievre. But he did come out and said he supported the leader. That's the key message there from Mr. Poilievre. I bring that up, Kate, because I speak to so many rank-and-file Conservative members who say, well, yeah, I'd kind of rather a guy like Poilievre than O'Toole. So how important is it to have kind of the backing of somebody like Poilievre if you're O'Toole?
It is really important, and I actually think Pierre is right. The next issue, it would be very surprising to me if the issue in the next election is not the economy and is not inflation. And I think when we're talking about what unites, rural Saskatchewan voters with those in suburban Toronto, it's pocketbook issues. Yeah. So we spent the last part of the campaign, in my view, doing some good foundational work to frankly undo the damage Andrew Scheer did in terms of portraying Conservatives as socially regressive. So we spent the last 3-4 weeks of the campaign effectively fighting to neutrality on issues that Conservatives rather not have be dominant, same-sex marriage, abortion, etc. So all that work went into being not scary. That is a really good foundation from which to build on and talk about issues that Conservatives actually want to discuss, like the economy. I think that wasn't really the issue this time. The issue was COVID. And I think we might have seemed a bit tone deaf had we gone all in on that, and we still would have been chased by questions around where Conservatives stand on social issues. So I think if we're looking at ways to move forward, ways to unite the different pockets of voters that we have, it has to come back to the economy. We need to see some really big, bold, ambitious policies on that front. Now that we have dispelled, I think, successfully, some of the questions that tend to dog Conservatives.
Yeah. I guess my point is, I think Poilievre is, he's kind of a good spokesperson for this term, the base. Would you agree? Like the base?
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Right? So for him to say, I don't have leadership ambitions and I support the leader and let's get on with it and this is the issue, I think if that's the message at the end of the day from people who are not Aaron O'Toole, it's not a bad message for the Conservative Party. What do you think, Carl?
Yeah, I mean, bread and butter issues are always key for a party that aspire to power, and you need to articulate it better, though. I think that Poilievre has been talking about inflation for a while now, and he has not been able to really make a lot of headways in terms of how it is being framed with the general public. There's definitely good material there. And of course, Kate is absolutely right. Like, the Conservatives spent a good chunk of the last part of the campaign trying to not look scary. So, my first advice would be get rid of those planks in your platform. I mean, it was right there. Abortion, guns, it was all there. So get rid of that, and maybe you'll make headways in the suburbs of this country.
Okay, yeah. That's the struggle right now, right? Isn't that the big question? Where is there room to grow? Kate? Yeah?
I don't think you can... My view on this is that it is very difficult to win with 70 or 80% of the vote, again, in rural Alberta or rural Saskatchewan, and win by 20 points in Ajax. Like, I think that we have to acknowledge that the Conservative coalition is a pretty... it's a pretty big one. And so what is the thread that ties these groups together? I don't think that it's carbon tax. I think that or the program that was proposed there, I think it's going to have to be some pretty big, ambitious financial policy. It sounds boring. It needs to be messaged the right way because, to Carl's point, Pierre can talk about inflation all he wants, but that's not what people are talking about right now. It will be, and there needs to be a way to message it to make it.
Well, you talk about gas. You talk about gas around the corner. Here's $1.40 today. Okay, you talk about the price of bread. You talk about the price of milk. You talk about the price of beef. I mean, these are the things that you don't talk about monetary policy.
Yeah, or GDP objective. Yeah, well, we should never talk about that.
Right. I'm not particularly interested in monetary policy anyway. But on that, and the attempt, such it is as it has been, Carl, to make this party, say, more appealing to the cohorts that find it unappealing. Women, younger voters, new Canadians, suburban and urban voters, working class voters, union members. Did I miss anybody? Do you think O'Toole is on the right track?
Well, I think he was on the right track, and I
Okay.
think there was a lot of openings made towards the working class, and it was from the get-go after he was elected leader, making different moves to try to secure that vote that too often doesn't go conservative. But there's a lot of room for them to grow there. So the thing is, we've seen now that Maxime Bernier and his party, with the stars aligned and everything, the pandemic, the sanitary measures, you name it, they did not win any seats and they did not really grow significantly. They cannot be seen as a threat by the Conservatives. They need to ignore that right flank and they need to focus on the red-blue switchers. As long as you don't do that, you will not win.
Okay. Maybe even some orange switchers.
Well, there's some out there.
There's some out there. Sure, there
Especially
is.
in the West and prairies, yeah.
Yeah, people who don't like Trudeau.
Yeah,
There's lots of people who don't like Trudeau, obviously.
There isn't anybody but Trudeau crowd, and they will vote from the NEP to the Conservatives depending on, who has the best chance of beating him.
Okay. On the right track? Moving in the right direction, in your opinion, Kate?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I think that there was some, it didn't show up in seats, but there was some good narrowing of margins in places that we need to win. Yeah, maybe we're only winning some rural prairie seats by 50% of the vote instead of 65. I would take it. If that meant we were getting closer in suburban areas, I would take it. So I think that it's wise for the party to not substitute the leader who is now a known entity. We talk politics all the time, but he's only in the chair for a year, right? He didn't actually have much exposure to regular voters, and there was a pandemic on top of that. So, he's more of a known entity. His popularity over the course of the campaign, his favorables, I should say, went in the right direction. They went up. So I think that they're in a good place to, again, have that foundation of kind of not being scary Neanderthals, and from there they can grow.
Okay. So the person tapped with doing this review, this kind of why did we lose review. Last time it was John Baird. There's a new person now. What's his name again?
James Cumming.
Yeah, okay. What kind of questions would you like to ask people? I don't know how he's going to do this, if it's going to be focus groups or just how the process that would be involved. But if you were, if you stuck a dozen people in a room and you asked them, why didn't you vote for the Conservative Party? I do wonder what kind of answers would come back. What kind of things do you think you'd hear, Kate?
Good question. I would want to ask what the party was doing to reach out to ethnic and visible minorities, ethnic voters and visible minorities, because that is an area where we used to do very, very well.
Yeah.
Your Mississaugas, Bramptons, et cetera.
Yeah.
And we didn't play there at all. Like we were, playing, frankly, in more white suburban areas. And I think that's a big problem for the Conservatives. So I would like to know what was done, if anything, to reach out to those voters, because I think that whatever happened there was not successful. And I think that, we also need to be looking ahead to whether or not people are still open to voting Conservative in the face of a new Liberal leader, because I think that this is probably Justin Trudeau's last election. I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I think this is Justin Trudeau's last election.
Right.
And so we need to know whether or not a substitution at the top is going to mean that is that going to be enough to change people's views on the Liberals? Will they want to change overall? I'd be trying to look ahead to that rather than necessarily dwell too much on the election past.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if you were doing an investigation into why didn't people vote for the Conservative Party, what kind of questions would you be asking, Carl?
Well, obviously, there's the things about the message. There's the thing about the classic Liberal play of fear-mongering against the Conservatives, which I think the Conservatives played into with their platform. But there's also, I think, you need to look at the ground game. A lot of the seats that the Liberals won, they won with their ground game. They had a better ground game. And you saw it when the mail-in ballot came in, and you saw it with the advance polls. That's why they won those seats. You could see the numbers go up as they were, counting those ballots. And so how do you fix that? Well, clearly, the Conservative Party, if there's a party that is in position to fix that, it's them. They raise the most money. They've been doing so for years now. So invest in your ground game and beat the Liberals at their own game.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, when we come back, speaking of the Prime Minister, front and center today, unveiling his vaccine mandate for the traveling public and federal public servants. Big local story here in the nation's capital. We'll talk about it in part 2 of Your Political Fix on City News.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay? You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. You know, there's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery is rented out to Frank Niccolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. You know, then customer service. You know, we're big on that. The cashiers, the deli. You're not, if you ask for something, they're not going to point. It's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there, okay? If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers. And we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, you know, can you try getting me this? You know, can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now, okay? So we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to, you know, live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them that, you know, like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, you know, from like all over the world. And we source it through, you know, distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. You know, we turn over a lot of product. You know, we package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You know, you're always going to find, you know, Cuddy turkey breast. You know, San Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made. Like, you know, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. You know, your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, you know, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. You know, takes, you know, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Part 2 of Your Political Fix with Carl Boulanger from Traxion, Kate Harrison from Summa. Carl, the Prime Minister at 11 o'clock is to unveil his vaccine mandate for federal public servants. Front page of the paper this morning. Federal public servants who aren't fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and don't obtain medical exemptions will be forced to take unpaid leave. In accordance with the requirements of a new vaccine mandate, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will unveil Wednesday, sources say. So given how effective, I'm sure we can agree it was an effective wedge issue during the campaign. Can Trudeau afford to waver even a little bit on this, Carl Boulanger? What do you think? What do you expect to hear?
I mean, yeah, I think he can afford to waver a little bit, actually.
Okay.
I think that the message that most people hear is there's a vaccine mandate in place. So it will depend, of course, on how many exceptions there are and how many people are getting it, you know, or taking advantage of it. But what's sad about all this is that it was always about being a wedge issue. It was never about being public safety and public health measures, because they would have done it before the campaign. But they waited and waited and waited to make sure this was part of the campaign discussion. And really, that's, I think, frankly, irresponsible. If you think it is needed from a public health point of view, then you don't campaign on it. You just do it because you are the government.
Yeah, Mr. Trudeau has, well, let's just say, Carl, his views on this issue have evolved over time. Right? Coincidentally, coinciding with the election campaign. Kate Harrison, what are you expecting to hear this morning from the Prime Minister on vaccine mandates?
I think that Carl is bang on. What people will take away is that there's a mandate in place, and then there's going to be a bunch of lingering questions and threads around how this is implemented, who it applies to. For example, if you're a public servant working from home and have the option to do remote work permanently, will you be required to be vaccinated even if you're not coming into contact with your colleagues?
Sounds like it.
That's the kind of question that I suspect there will probably not be a sufficient answer to today. In addition to the public servant announcement, there's going to be, I think, equal confusion and a lack of clarity around air or rail or marine passengers. We still don't have a vaccine passport in place, for example. Will all of these people be trained to recognize and identify proper vaccine certification for every province in Canada?
Yeah.
It seems to me that, there's a dogmatic view to having a policy in place by the end of the month, and that's entirely about politics, to Carl's point.
Okay.
And then they're going to worry about the machinery of it after the fact. But I think it's going to create a lot of issues in terms of implementation and compliance until they can get the passport side of things sorted.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear the union reaction, too.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. They are in a tough position, the unions, because they have a duty to represent their members, and some of their members may have legitimate reasons to say, I can't have the vaccine or I don't want the vaccine.
Oh, yeah. We have a story here in Ottawa today. We have 4 big unions in Ottawa. This is a policy in the city of Ottawa already.
Yeah.
And we have the 4 biggest unions at the municipal level are already saying, yeah, I don't think so. We're not in favor of that.
And so what will be interesting is where or when this ends up in court, because it could limit the powers of the government to impose such measures, which they have right now in law. I mean, all the provinces have in their Public Health Safety Emergencies Act the power to vaccinate part of the population or the entire population, and they're not using it, but this could limit it severely if the unions win in court.
Yeah, Kate, you make such a great point. And then it's, okay, and what about, where is the national vaccine passport, right? The federal vaccine. And what about me if I've had mixed doses?
Mm-hmm.
Am I ever going to be able to leave the country again, given so many countries don't even recognize people as being vaccinated if they've mixed and matched vaccine doses? What about that? What are they going to do about that? So many unanswered questions.
If you're stepping foot in an airport, you need to be double vaccinated if you're picking somebody up, or is it just if you're traveling, right? Like there's all sorts of questions here that, again, I think the government is content to have play out. I also think there's going to be a huge reliance on employers to be responsible for implementation. I think the feds are just going to set the policy, say you got to do it, and then everything else is going to be kind of left to employers to figure out from there. It's going to be pretty challenging, and I think it's going to take a fair bit of time in order to get it right.
And the other issue is, if they impose it on everybody else, what will happen to MPs?
Mm-hmm.
Will they impose it on others, but not on themselves?
Yeah, okay. All right. John Ibbotson, columnist this week on Justin Trudeau's future. Okay, walks in the sand, walks in the snow. He may not be prime minister that much longer. A futile election, a lack of fresh initiatives, and a disjointed economy all point to Mr. Trudeau's departure before the next election. The latest family vacation embarrassment might hasten the move. Kate, you already think he's not going to be around, right? Next election?
Yeah, I think that's
okay.
He's done. Yeah.
Okay. Carl?
Well, I mean, I guess, but it's his own call, right? It's his decision. He's not going to be pushed out. So if he wants to stay, he will stay. You don't push out a sitting prime minister in a minority situation, or else you're asking for trouble. And you see what party infighting does to a party with the Green Party in this current cycle. It's worse if it's the government, and I don't think it will play out that way unless he and Sophie decide that they've had enough, and that's a possibility for sure. But he's not going to be pushed out.
Yeah, I agree with Carl. It's going to be on his own schedule and his own terms. I think that there's a few pretty big legacy pieces that maybe he'll look to accomplish in the next 8 to 10 months. Some type of COP26 big climate conference coming up at the end of, or at the beginning of November, I think there's going to be some splashiness around that. Try and shepherd the country through, the fourth wave of COVID, or maybe a fifth wave, up the vaccination rate nationally, perhaps do something on reconciliation. I'm not sure what that could be. That's going to be seen as a genuine move to Indigenous peoples, but they'll try to do something. Maybe it's more lifting of boil water advisories. And then I think, this time next year, it's hard for me to see that, a leadership would not be initiated by this particular point. If he can do a couple of big legacy pieces between now and then,
Try to give the next leader some runway too, right?
That's exactly it. So, I mean, he could, he maybe stays as an interim leader while that happens. Who knows? That lends itself to a narrative around a lame duck prime minister. So they might not want to do that. But I think that we're looking at a longer period ahead of the next election, rather than the 18 months we have, 24, maybe even 36. So he leaves, gives the new leader an opportunity to build some profile, and then we're at it all over again.
Oh, can't wait. All right, here we go. Thank you.
Speak for yourself.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you. You too.
Bye. Carl Belanger, president of Traxion Strategies. And Kate Harrison is the vice chair of Summa Strategies. I'm Rob Snow, hosting the Talkback Hour on vaccine mandates. Important question for you today at 750-1310. This is City News.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smith Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. Now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, October 6th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees, 9 degrees in Smith Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. There's word the Prime Minister is about to announce sometime around the 11 o'clock hour that federal public servants who haven't had their COVID-19 shots will be forced to take unpaid leave. The policy expected to be unveiled this morning. Here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
We should get the official word later this morning. The Prime Minister does have an event planned for 11 o'clock in Ottawa. The vaccine mandate would apply to all federal employees, even those currently working from home. And any workers refusing the shots would have to take unpaid leave. The policy also expected to apply to travelers within Canada, a promise Trudeau made during the election campaign.
We have made the decision that federal public servants need to be fully vaccinated. That is something that we're also applying to everyone who gets on a plane or a train in the coming months in Canada.
The Public Service Alliance of Canada, the union representing over 200,000 of Canada's 300,000 federal employees, doesn't have a problem with the vaccine mandate, but does want specifics about the unpaid leave. I'm Kevin Meisner.
City News time at 10:02. And now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Some fog patches for some, otherwise sun and cloud today, the high 21 degrees. Tonight, a few clouds, some more fog patches, 8 for the low, and tomorrow, sun and cloud, another warm day, 21. That's the high today, 21.
And right now, the fog advisory has finally come to an end. It's 11 degrees in Ottawa, 9 degrees in Smith Falls. City of Ottawa has issued a second notice of default against Rideau Transit Group, but one city councillor says issues with Confederation Line run deep and a full judicial inquiry is what's needed. Here's City News reporter Chris Curries.
This was the necessary first step, issuing the notice almost 2 weeks ago, highlighting that RTG has failed to live up to the contract, and there's a good chance they and the City of Ottawa will end up in court.
This is the process that we have available to us through the P3 agreement that we signed.
But Catherine Mckenney tells City News a full judicial inquiry is still the best outcome.
We need the heft of a judge being able to ask questions, being able to ask for any and all documentation to come up with answers to how we got the system that we got today.
They add that there is support around the council table, even though the mayor has come out strongly opposed to it. It will be debated next week at council. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time, 10:03. Now the latest numbers on COVID cases in Ontario. The health unit reporting 476 more cases province-wide today. 23 of those are in Ottawa. There are 5 more cases in Eastern Ontario's health unit, 2 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases today in Renfrew County. A motorcycle rider is in life-threatening condition in hospital after a collision that happened just after midnight. Now, the rider was in a collision on Goulburn Side Road, and that closed a portion of the road for an investigation between Innovation and Key Rock in Canada. It did just open around 8 o'clock this morning. There was also a vehicle rollover near Carp and Richardson. That knocked over a hydro pole, which will have to be replaced. Hydro One will make repairs at some point today, so do expect an outage in that immediate area at some point today. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker to be vaccinated as a condition of their employment? That's the question of the hour. We're going to do a rapid poll at 750-1310. Every phone line is available right now. Big day in Canadian politics, okay? A big day in the fight against COVID-19. Big day for organized labor. Because the vaccine mandate story is the big story of the day. And that's my question for you. Rapid poll style, try to fit in as many questions as we can between now and the end of the hour. It's your hour, okay? I am going to try my best. I know I have said this before. I'm going to try and keep my opinions to myself, okay? It's not easy for me. I'm working on it with my therapist. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. Don't be so opinionated, okay? We set this hour aside for you and your opinions. But this is a very important issue. because there are very few people in Ottawa who won't be impacted by the decisions that are being made by political leaders when it comes to vaccine mandates. Do you think it is acceptable for an employer to require a worker to be vaccinated as a condition of their employment? That's the question. We'll see where the discussion takes us over the course of the hour. I am keeping track of your answers. I am keeping score. Do you say, yes, an employer has an obligation. It's the obligation of the employer to provide a safe working environment for all employees, and that includes making sure that all employees are fully vaccinated against COVID-19? Or do you say, no, it's an infringement of individual rights, of worker rights, like conscience rights, religious rights? Where do you come down on this? I all but guarantee it's headed for the courts. Whatever the policies are today are destined to be challenged by the courts. And it looks like organized labor, some of the most powerful public sector unions in the country, they are gearing up for a fight. They are itching for a fight on this one. So I want to know your opinions. Give me a call, yes or no. Is it acceptable for an employer to require a worker to be vaccinated as a condition of their employment, yes or no? Just offer up a brief defense of your position, and then we will move along to the next caller. We're not reinventing the wheel around here, okay? We're not reinventing the wheel. 750-1310, and let's get it on. Zach in Ottawa, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. Yes or no?
I say absolutely 100% no.
Okay, why?
For a plethora of reasons.
All right.
Just on a quick note, if it's about COVID and preventing COVID in the workplace, why don't you rapid test everybody? And because people who get the vaccine can still get COVID, so if it's about COVID, then prevent COVID by rapid testing everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Zach. Zach, 100% absolutely no. There we go. That's the first call, 750-1310. Do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker be vaccinated against COVID-19 as a condition of employment? In the East End, Andrew. Good morning, Andrew. Yes or no, Andrew?
Good morning, Rob. I'm going to have to agree that it should be a mandate. I mean, at the end of the day, these companies have to protect the well-being of their employees plus their clients. So, I mean, every available chance you can, by all means.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. There we go. All tied up. 1-1. Armand.
Good morning.
Armand, where have you been? Long time no talk, Armand.
I know. I've been too busy. I've been missing your phone calls.
Come on. What
here
kind
and
of
there.
All right.
I text it when it's too late, and you're very busy, so I haven't had a chance to go on.
Okay. All right, Armand.
It's good news. But anyway,
Thank you.
Yes, people have to be vaccinated at work. The employer should say, you will be vaccinated or take the door, because you've got to protect the other workers that are there that are vaccinated and the public out there. If you're delivering or something, you got to protect the public here. Whoa.
Have to protect the public, have to protect workers in the workplace, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to be vaccinated.
And
No two ways about it.
No two ways about it. Okay, Armand. Thank you. There we go. 750-1310. Why are we talking about this? Well, at 11 o'clock, there's a news conference. The Prime Minister has called a news conference. Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, she's going to be there as well. We're going to bring that news conference to you when it begins. And the topic of the news conference has already been leaked to the media. It's on the front page of the newspaper, from crying out loud. It's out there already. It's vaccine mandates for the federal public service and for people traveling on domestic flights, interprovincial rail, or cruise ships. But my focus right now is the workplace. Federal government workplace. Mr. Trudeau had I call it his come to Jesus moment, okay, on vaccine mandates for the federal public service, because the Liberals, the only reason we're even here and having this discussion is because the Liberals thought it'd be a political winner for them. And it worked, because it tied the O'Toole campaign all up in knots at a critical time during the election campaign. Very effective. wedge issue. And the position that's offered by the Prime Minister today is not the same position that he had on the issue just a couple of months ago. It's political, but they are where we are, and they're going to do it. Well, they're going to try and do it anyway. And federal public servants who aren't fully vaccinated against COVID-19 will be forced to take unpaid leave. Medical exemptions allowed, but that's it. Otherwise, doesn't matter if you're working from home by the sounds of it. Otherwise, unless you have a medical exemption, if you are not vaccinated, you will not be earning a paycheck from the government of Canada. End of story. And I want to know what you think about that here this morning during the Talkback Hour. Rock in Canada. Rock. Yes or no, Rock?
A definite no.
Definite no. Why, sir?
First and foremost, the vaccine, the mRNA vaccine, is not officially approved by Health Canada or the American version, and people don't realize that, and it's still in an experimental phase.
Okay, well,
therefore,
whatever. We're far down that road now,
and
Rock.
it's tyranny. Yeah. No, we're not far down any road. It's basically, I think it's tyranny. And that's my decision.
It's tyranny.
It's a no.
Okay, gotcha. No, it's tyranny. Fair enough. Okay. Sonia in Ottawa. Yes or no, Sonia?
Hi, very good morning.
Hi.
No.
Absolutely not. Why not?
No. Well, first of all, we shouldn't be forcing anyone to take a medical treatment they don't want.
Okay.
And obviously the vaccine doesn't protect you. You can, even though you're vaccinated, you can get the virus, you can transmit the virus.
Yeah. Not going to get sick, not going to end up in the hospital.
We don't know that for sure. Because we don't have
the data is pretty clear on that now, isn't it?
We don't have long-term studies. There are no long-term studies. So we shouldn't be forcing people to take a medical treatment they don't want. Absolutely not. I disagree, and I'm glad they're going to court.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, Sonia. Thank you. I understand the passion. Okay, I'm trying to just be the referee here. Joe in Brockville. Joe, yes or no? Yes or no?
It's a definite yes.
Okay. Why, sir?
Tired of lockdowns, tired of wearing a mask. You know, these babies have to suck it up and get the vaccine.
Suck it up and get the vaccine. Health Canada's fully approved these vaccines, by the way,
Yes,
just to
I
the
know.
previous
And
caller's
the
point.
people
Yeah.
are watching YouTube and getting the wrong information.
Yeah, okay. All right, Joe, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it, sir. Yeah. The question, do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker to be vaccinated as a condition of their employment? The Prime Minister this morning is going to say, yes, it's acceptable for the federal government workforce, for federally regulated workforces. I want to know what you think. We talked about this last week when it was all just rumor and speculation, but it's not rumor and speculation anymore. It's happening. It's going to be announced in an hour from now. And this is our city's largest employer. 165,000 people in the city of Ottawa work for the federal government directly. Tens of thousands more on the Quebec side, more in the valley, more in the counties, down in the Seaway. Paychecks, livelihoods, careers rely on employment with the federal government, and now they're going to be told, no jab, no job, unpaid leave. Do you agree? Your calls next during our rapid poll. Yes or no on City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around to Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they're both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people have had layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Your frequency.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
After one period of play, it's all tied up 3-3. Our rapid poll. Talkback hour. Do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker be vaccinated as a condition of employment? Asking this ahead of the Prime Minister's news conference at 11 o'clock. Paul in the Market. Paul, you're on City News. Good morning. Yes or no, Paul?
Good morning, Rob. It's an absolute yes.
Absolute yes. Okay, why is that, sir?
Well, the last I checked, it has no purview or doesn't fall under any grounds of the Canadian Human Rights Charter. And if the unions want to fight it or whatnot, let them have the fight that they can. Let them spend the union dues. Mm-hmm. And the charter hasn't been amended since the repeal of Section 67. So have at it. It's not discriminatory in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens with it. I do believe it's destined for the courts. But I thank you, Paul, for your opinion. It's greatly appreciated. Is it DP in Nepean?
It's DP in Nepean.
DP, sorry, DP, go ahead, DP, yeah. Yes or no?
For me, it's a definite yes.
Okay.
And
why is that?
I used to hate taking history in school, but I think now's a good time for a history lesson. Nobody has, we don't see polio, chickenpox, measles like we used to. We all have immunization records from when we were kids. We couldn't go to school. It wasn't a choice. If you weren't immunized against these things that we don't see anymore, you simply couldn't be in public. So this is that time. This is that time where we establish immunity, everyone gets vaccinated, and then it just becomes a regular part of life for generations to come in a safer community.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your call. Kim in Barhaven, you're on City News. Yes or no on the vaccine mandate about to be announced by Mr. Trudeau?
It's a definite yes.
Definitely yes. Okay,
and
why is
I
that?
actually agree 100% with everything DP from Naveen just said.
Okay.
Absolutely everything. I mean, they're jeopardizing the health of others, people who do not get vaccinated. There are people out there who, through medical reasons, are not able to be vaccinated, and you are jeopardizing their health by not being vaccinated because you don't know if you're carrying the disease or not.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you for your call. You could make the case it's a pressure tactic. It's a pressure tactic. I will say, I think for the majority of, say, federal government workers, it's going to be a non-issue anyway. They're fully vaccinated anyway. I'm working from the assumption that the federal workforce is probably representative of the wider Canadian society, where you have 80% of Canadian adults are fully vaccinated anyway. I'm assuming that's probably the same for the federal government, and probably 80%, if not more, are fully vaccinated. But if you work from the assumption that 20% of them aren't, you're talking about tens of thousands of people just here in Ottawa, right? Good jobs, good money, paying union dues. For one reason or another, they're willing to put it all at risk over a couple of doses of vaccine. I don't get it, but that's not the issue. The issue is their employer, the government, is saying, if that's how you feel, if that's what you believe, then you're not going to get paid by the federal government anymore, and you'll be put on unpaid leave. Do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker be vaccinated as a condition of employment? To the phones again. Rob in Ottawa. Yes or no, sir?
That's a hard no, boss.
Hard no. Okay. Why is that, sir?
It's just, you shouldn't be forced to anything into a medical procedure or what have you. Last time that I checked, you did have the right to choose whether or not you wanted to do something, and this is basically coercion where people's livelihoods are at stake, and you're basically telling them, well, you don't have a choice anymore. Do what we say, or can't provide for your family anymore. If you take a lesson on ethics, that's totally unethical, and we're looking at the government for being strong, ethically minded, right? That's to lead us. At least that's what
I suppose. I don't really look to the government for ethical guidance, Rob.
You're a smart man.
Okay. But Rob, look, your opinion is a very popular opinion, sir, and I appreciate it. I don't agree with it, but I understand your point of view, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay. But I am going to move along. Judy in Merrickville.
Hi.
Beautiful Merrickville. I miss Merrickville. I haven't been there in a while. I'll have to get back there. It's probably pretty this time of year.
It's a beautiful spot.
Yes. Where are you? But where are you on this issue, Judy?
I disagree with the government enforcing the rule.
You do?
I think that decision should be made in the terms of employment when you're applying for a job, whether that employer can dictate your medical health.
Okay.
Also, I don't believe the vaccine is fully effective. From the newspaper statistics, roughly 150 people in Ontario every day are getting COVID who are fully vaccinated.
I don't think that's quite accurate, ma'am. No, I don't think that's quite accurate.
I've been just cutting them out of the newspaper, so I'm just going by the newspaper numbers.
Okay. 150 people a day?
In Ontario.
I don't know.
But so
anyway,
there's no real guarantee that having the vaccination is going to prevent you from getting COVID.
Okay, but it does prevent serious illness. To a great extent, it prevents serious illness, and you're not going to end up in the hospital, Judy. They're very effective at preventing you from getting into the hospital, having to be admitted into the hospital.
Well, very few of the statistics I'm keeping show people are hospitalized, and even fewer still are in intensive care, but it does happen.
Okay, Judy. You're opposed to it?
Yes.
You're against what Mr. Trudeau's going to announce later today? Okay,
yes,
all right. Okay, thank you. Yep. 6-5. Like I said, keeping score. Steve, Ottawa. Steve.
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
It goes, sir. With or without me, it goes. What do you think, yes or no?
I'm going to say no.
No, okay.
Two things. It seems really counterproductive when there's job openings all over the place, and they're going to start
putting up more restrictions to hire people or to keep people employed. Not only that, I mean, if you're like, last week they pulled Moderna because it was giving 18 to 24-year-olds heart attacks. I mean, I guess science didn't see that one coming.
Okay, Steve. All right. Okay, thank you, Steve. Sorry, Steve. Continue.
Anyway, yeah, I just think hard no on that one. I mean,
hard no. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it seems a lot of the no's are hard no's. A lot of the no's are hard no's. Time for a couple of more before we reset things at the bottom of the hour. Rodney in Ottawa. Rodney.
Good morning.
Yes or no?
It's going to be a yes.
Going to be a yes.
And then the reason being is I'm going to want the government to function, or the reason being, if it's my business, I want my business to function to be able to service the customers. And when I don't function to service the customers, I'm going to lose my customers. And it's just going to be the same thing as your truck. You can go out and drive your truck if a few little things are wrong with it, but eventually you won't be able to drive it if all kinds of things are going to be wrong with it. And then you're going to have to walk to work.
Okay, Rodney. Okay, thank you. You lost me there when you got into pickup trucks, but whatever. Maria in Nepean. Wonderful place to be in. Maria.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Maria.
It's a hard no for me.
Hard no again. Okay, and why is that, ma'am?
Well, everyone seems to believe that it provides immunity, and it doesn't. This vaccine simply reduces the symptoms. So, and now it's waning. After 6 months, it's waning. The first vaccine wasn't long-term. Second vaccine isn't long-term. Third, now we're into
so you question the efficacy. Right?
And also the ethics. I mean, who wants to take medication that they don't want to take? I mean, you can't force people to inject medication into their own bodies if they don't want it. And if people are vaccinated, they can still spread it.
Well, you say that you can't. I'm going to tell you at 11 o'clock, the Prime Minister is going to say you can. And the city of Ottawa is going to say you can. And private employers all across the country are saying, not only can we are, Maria. We are. That's where we are. Okay, I got you, Maria. I got to go. It's halftime. And we've taken 14 calls already. So it might be a record-breaking talkback hour here for calls. And we've taken 14 calls on this issue in 30 minutes, like 2 minutes a call. And it's tied. 50-50, 7-7. Unbelievable. Rob Snow Show on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, October 6th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees, Smith Falls 10. And here's what's making news this hour. The province says there are 476 more cases of COVID in Ontario today, along with 14 more deaths. Of the new cases, 14 are in, 39 are in Ottawa. 5 are in Eastern Ontario. There are 2 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and no new cases in Renfrew. The case numbers come from 39,400 tests that were completed, and the positive rate is 1.7%. The new case number in Ontario, in Ottawa, is 23 today. One city councilor telling City News it's time for a judicial inquiry into light rail problems. Catherine Mckenney says a judge asking questions and asking for all the documents would get to the bottom of the light rail problems in the city. Better stock up on cereal. A strike has hit Kellogg's plants in the United States. Some 1,400 people are on strike over issues like pay, benefits, and retirement. Now, Kellogg says the average employee made over $120,000 last year. The union, though, says they've been working 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts, to keep up with pandemic cereal demand. City News Time 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker be vaccinated as a condition of their employment? The Prime Minister thinks so. He will mandate full vaccination for the federal government, for the workforce of the federal government. It's in the newspaper today. It was leaked to the media last night. Federal public servants who aren't fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and don't obtain medical exemptions will be forced to take unpaid leave in accordance with the requirements of a new vaccine mandate. Justin Trudeau will unveil Wednesday, in other words, this morning, according to sources. So that's why we're asking that question. But there is also kind of an added bonus story this morning. That's what's happening at the municipal level. The public broadcaster is reporting this morning 4 unions have, quote, filed grievances over the city of Ottawa's mandatory vaccination policy. Under that policy, city workers have until November 1st to show that they are fully vaccinated, and if not, there will be consequences. Quote, not be permitted in the workplace. Can include leave without pay or discipline up to and including dismissal, according to the city's website. So the unions are 2 locals of the ATU, Amalgamated Transit Union, and CUPE, locals 5500 and 503. They're all grieving this policy from the city. They say it's not a coordinated effort, but no matter, they're all singing from the same hymn book. So we're doing it rapid poll style. It was tied 7-7 at halftime. See where we are by 11 o'clock. Paul in Stittsville. Yes or no, sir?
Absolutely no. Thank you very much.
No. That's it, Paul? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Absolutely no. Steve in Westboro. Steve, good morning. You're on City News.
100% yes.
100% yes. And why is that, sir? Thank you.
Why? Because we went out of our way, we got our shots, and we are okay, and everybody should get their shots. I agree with that 100%, no matter what the union says.
Okay.
I think it's to protect the public, it's to protect us in general, and 100% I agree we should all get our shots, and if they don't, there should 100% be consequences.
Should be consequences. Okay, well, consequences could be unpaid leave. Consequences could be you're fired.
And get fired, off the job you go.
Okay, Steve, thank you. A little bad connection there. Dropping out. Dropping in on Emily in Barrhaven. Emily.
Hi.
Hi, Emily.
Yeah, they definitely should be getting vaccinated.
Okay.
Those people saying they're being forced, you're not being forced. It's not your right to that employment. Just get vaccinated.
Not being forced. Okay.
No, you're not being forced to keep that job if you don't like it.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, nobody's forcing you, but you just have to understand, well, You're not going to work here anymore.
Right.
Or you're not going to draw a paycheck until you do.
Right.
Okay. All right, Emily. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. 750-1310. Talkback Hour Rapid Poll. 2 lines available. Let's go here. Ann, Ottawa. Ann.
Well, some of these people are saying they're hard no's. I'm a hard yes.
Hard yes. Okay.
And I'm kind of like rolling my eyes when they're saying this is a medical treatment. It's not. It's a public health prevention measure. Okay. And I'm sorry. I've listened to Howard Levitt, the leading employment lawyer in the country, and he says, yes, your employer can bloody well dictate that you have to get that just to prevent. We can't screw around. This is a pandemic.
Well, I mean, you can imagine the workplace safety guidelines that governments of all levels impose on workplaces and employers, right?
No, it makes no sense. What are these people going to do? Go live in a cave? If you ever want to get on a plane or a train or even a cruise ship, you're going to have to show proof of double vax. So you may as well suck it up, dudes, and get it.
Suck it up and get it. Okay.
Right.
All right. Ann.
Okay, bye.
All right. She never beats around the bush, Ann, in Ottawa, does she? No. Bill in Ottawa. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Rob. An emphatic yes.
Emphatic yes.
I think it should be incumbent upon the anti-vaxxers to tell us how we're going to get past COVID-19, or if we are. Do they propose that we just live with it until it burns out or whatever?
Okay.
I don't understand this. Of course he should get vaccinated. We have to do something to try and get past this thing.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I find it. Should I be surprised? Oh, yeah, I'm kind of surprised at the Amalgamated Transit Union's position. Don't you think a bus driver should be fully vaccinated? Frontline city worker driving a bus for OC Transpo? I happen to. The union doesn't. I understand that. Okay. What do you think? This is the original rapid poll question. Do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker be vaccinated as a condition of their employment? That's the question. For example, OC Transpo is the employer. Okay? It thinks drivers shouldn't be fully vaccinated. Oh, sorry. OC Transpo is the employer and thinks drivers should be fully vaccinated, but the union does not think they need to be fully vaccinated, says it's a matter of rights, charter rights, conscience rights. And then you have CUPE 503 in this city, which is the largest union representing municipal employees in all of Eastern Ontario, let alone the city of Ottawa. And some of its members include healthcare workers working for the city of Ottawa. Don't you think healthcare workers working for the city of Ottawa should have to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19? I do. This union does not. I do. But I want to know what you think. Do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker be vaccinated as a condition of employment? David, Barrhaven, yes or no? Sir?
Rob.
Yes.
Quick aside.
Quick aside. Don't have time for quick asides. Yes or no?
Pothole on Fallowfield.
Yeah, I don't have time to talk about potholes.
No, but
okay.
It's a year and 2 weeks, so they
year
did
and 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yes
on
or
the
no?
vaccination thing, if an employer can be held legally responsible and sued because somebody catches COVID because they didn't ensure that their other employees were vaccinated, then absolutely it should be a condition of employment.
All right.
But I don't know as that point is very clear at this point in time, that an employer can be held responsible illegally. Like if you could be sued because somebody got COVID and they traced it to somebody who wasn't vaccinated in the workplace, is the employer legally liable? And that if
Good
he
question.
is, then absolutely it should be a condition of
All right,
employment.
I'm going to put you down as a yes anyway. It sounds like you're leaning that way. It sounds like you're leaning that way, and I think both you and I know that issue as well is probably destined for robes and judges as well, sir. So, thank you, David. Yeah,
Thanks, Rob.
Yep. Gary in the market. Gary.
Hey, Rob.
Yes, sir. Yes or no?
First-time
Gary?
listener, first-time caller.
Appreciate it, sir.
Okay. I'm a hard no.
Hard no.
No, for a couple of reasons at least. First of all, those employers, since there's so many adverse effects and even deaths from the vaccine, are they going to be responsible to pay the families off if that person dies or has adverse effects where they can't work for the rest of their lives? Or is their family going to be taken care of by an employee?
Okay.
Employer, I doubt it. And the second thing is, it's not a true vaccine. It's not like the polio vaccine.
Well, what is it then, sir?
It's what's called a subunit vaccine, which is used for treatment only. So,
I don't know.
Well, if you looked into it, that's exactly what it is.
Where should I look, Gary? Where should I look? On YouTube?
Well, you can go on Mail. Or, you can go any.
I should go on YouTube. Did you get a medical degree on YouTube, Gary? Okay. All right. I'm YouTube certified. I'm a YouTube vaccinologist. I love that. Just put the caller on hold, David. Sorry. We had Dr. Don Bodish on yesterday, right? Canada Research Chair in Immunology, PhD, Oxford, okay? That's who I listen to. With all due respect, okay? Jay Armbright. Jay, good morning. Yes or no, Jay?
Hey, Rob. Yeah, it's for sure yes for me.
Okay. Why, sir?
It's for the greater good of society. It obviously works. The numbers have all gone down, so it's ridiculous if people don't want to get it. I mean.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for having your say. It's a very important issue. And again, we'll have the Prime Minister's news conferences at 11 o'clock. Rockland. Catherine, you're on City News. Are you a yes or you a no on these vaccine mandates, Catherine?
I'm a first-time caller, long-time listener.
I appreciate that, Catherine.
And I'm definitely hard no.
Hard no.
Hard no. And I can tell you, looking at the...
In my heart here. Okay, all right.
At the Ontario website, the COVID-19 website, you can look at it, and the stats are there. In the hospital right now, there's 101 unvaccinated, 8 partially vaccinated, 41 fully vaccinated in the hospital. In ICU, there is 8 fully vaccinated, 8 partially vaccinated, and 75 unvaccinated.
Okay.
It doesn't work like they say it's supposed to. Hard no.
Hard no. Okay.
Hard no.
All right. Okay. Gotcha. Boy, it's a tough sell, this one. Nevertheless, people in favor of the mandatory vaccines are still leading the way here. After 23 calls, it is 13 to 10. Brockville. Ian, you're on City News.
Rob Snow.
Yes.
Okay, short and sweet. I'm an operator, for everybody who doesn't remember, so long story short, if I want to run a bulldozer that I don't like the brand name of, guess what? The fastest way to go and choose what I want to run is to go out and buy the machine. If I don't want to work for somebody, I don't want like what they're offering me, like some of us have done in life, go and start up your own business. Do I agree with this at all? No. But is it something that needs to be done? Yes. I just hope that at the end of the day, if we're going to give all that CERB away to people, good Lord, please help them, whether it's the nurses or whoever it is. If somebody's going to lose their job and they're especially a frontline worker, I would hope to the good Lord that at least you're going to get the REI for 11 months.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Can I just, am I allowed to, 1 minute to rant here? All right. To me, it's the OC Transpose Union, ATU. It's their position that's a real slap in the face to me, okay? This city has bent over backwards to accommodate the rank-and-file employees at OC Transpo because of their frontline status, because people rely on public transit. The city government spent millions and millions of dollars making retrofits to every single public transit vehicle in the city of Ottawa to make sure our bus operators were safe as could be. All well and good. Some of us thought we paid way too much, probably got ripped off, gouged. The city council and the city management went to the mat for the ATU members, didn't lay off any bus drivers or any LRT operators, even when ridership was basically down to zero. And nobody was riding the bus anywhere. And people were calling the Rob Snow Show every day saying, why is this empty bus going around and around and around and around my neighborhood every day? Empty buses driving all over the city. How much is this costing? And yet not a single employee at OC Transport was never laid off. And now the union comes out and says, we don't think our workers should be fully vaccinated in order to go back to work driving a bus. You have got to be kidding me. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me. People don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, we had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me. I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew it that we have to wait, and we knew it that we're gonna be fine. In this time, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song for my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what the grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food, food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that would bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
The Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
And down the stretch they come. In the talkback hour, rapid poll. 1410 is the score. On this question, do you think it's acceptable for an employer to require a worker to be vaccinated as a condition of employment? That's what we're talking about this morning. The upcoming federal government's vaccine mandate, the big move from Trudeau, and the pushback from the unions. Whose side are you on? At 750-1310. See how things end up here. Maxwell, downtown.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir. Yes or no, sir?
I'm going to go with a no. Let me preface that with saying that I am a federal public servant, and I am fully vaccinated.
Okay.
But my answer is still no.
Still no. Okay. Still no. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Maxwell. Yeah, okay. Kate in Ottawa. Good morning, Kate. You're on City News.
Good morning.
Morning, Kate.
Absolutely not. Pfizer has said from the very beginning that their vaccines are only good for every 6 months. And now the media is just talking about how we might need a third shot.
Yeah.
Well, we've known for a long time that this is going to continue until they come out with a better vaccine. And this vaccine is not a transmission blocking vaccine. I would completely understand if it was mandated, if this vaccine actually...
Okay. Let's say it was a better vaccine, Kate. A vaccine that you thought was like the gold standard of vaccines. Okay.
Even then, I think it's a personal.
Even then, right?
And money does not take over people's bodies. It's coercion. You do this, you inject this in your body, or you don't have a job. That is completely wrong.
Okay.
My rights don't end where your fear begins.
Okay. What about my right to have a safe work environment?
You got the vaccine.
You got the vaccine, but you just told me the vaccine is not effective, Kate.
All
right, yeah, and around and around and around we go. And around and around and around we go. Tom in Alta Vista.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Tom.
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely, yes. Okay.
And I would even go further than that.
Yes.
But no leader has the cojones to do it, is make it mandatory for all Canadians.
Mandatory for all Canadians. Okay.
For everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, if you've got a hole in a dam, if you've got two holes in a dam and you plug one, you still have another hole.
Okay.
And it's going to leak through there. So if everybody's vaccinated, then everybody's safe.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
That's my view.
Good view. Good view.
Okay.
Yep. Bill in Canada.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there, sir. I feel like we've had this conversation about 100 times before, but let's have it again.
I'm against it. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay.
When we trump our safety for our existence and the risk of living, come on. We have to stop living in fear and start living. This is nonsense that's been going on.
Okay.
And it's... The arguments I'm hearing, all valid, yes and no, but for the people who, for lack of a better word, the people who want to have 100% mandate for doing anything in life, well then, you live in your house and you die there. You can't stop living.
Well, I mean, that could apply to the unvaccinated. If you're unwilling to do what some of us view as your civic duty to protect yourself and to protect your neighbors and your friends and your family, then you can live like a hermit, Bill, out there in Canada.
You guys live like a hermit.
Go away. Sharon in Ottawa. Sharon.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah.
It's really hard to follow something like that.
Okay.
I loved your rant about OC Transpo.
All right. Okay.
The same people that claim they have all these rights, are the ones that are basically, I see, taking away our rights. I'm for the vaccine mandate. I want my freedom. I want freedom for my family, my friends, and the only way we're going to get it is if everyone sort of piles on and gets the vaccine and we get past this. But the arguments I've been listening to this morning are cracking me up. There's 3 people in the ICU who were vaccinated, but there's 40 more that weren't. But they hang on to that 3. It makes no sense.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Oh, yeah, lots of time. Could probably fit in 20 more calls here. Elizabeth in Navan. Best thing that ever happened was when Navan took over the city of Ottawa. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Home of the 50-horse hitch.
I am a former federal employee police officer.
Okay.
My husband, former federal with Navy. Both had to be vaccinated up the yin-yang for the jobs.
Had to be. No choice.
No choice.
Okay.
And I don't see a problem with this. This is a public pandemic. We have kids and immunocompromised that cannot be vaccinated. I think definitely mandated is the way to go.
All right. Thank you. There you go. Isn't that interesting? This person, Frank in Ottawa. Frank.
Hey.
Hey.
First First-time caller.
Appreciate that, Frank.
I'll keep it simple. Yes, they should be. And to earlier points, the ICU cases of unvaccinated, there's 10 times greater chance if you're unvaccinated or partially vaccinated. So 10 times odds is pretty good to me.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Yep, short and sweet. A man, a few words. Shay in Ottawa. You're on City News. Shay.
Hi, thank you. First-time caller.
Appreciate
I'm a
it.
hard yes.
Hard yes. Okay.
Yes, and the reason is because these are the same people that first blamed the 5G network, then they were the anti-maskers, now they are anti-vaccinated. Let them pay the price. I mean, they need to suck it up at this point.
Suck it up. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I think that just leave the people on the line and we'll take those calls, David. Judy in Ottawa. Judy. Yes or no, Judy? Judy? Woohoo, Judy. Nope. Okay, we'll take one more after this if we can. Claude.
Hey, how's it going?
It goes, sir. With or without me, everything goes. Claude, yes or no?
I'm a no, man, and it's just straight up because the government's been lying to us for so many years about so many other things, and now we're all going to roll up our arms and say, shoot us with something. We have no idea really what it is.
Okay.
It's not a good idea.
No? Do you have any idea what's in your shampoo, Claude?
No, I don't.
No, but you use it every day, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't inject it into my system.
You wouldn't
it's just
inject it. Well,
people
whatever.
take drugs and they don't know what's in the drugs off the streets, but yet they're illegal. Now all of a sudden the government came up with something.
Okay,
no,
are they?
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. Gotcha. Okay, all right. This will be the last call. TJ. Arnprior.
First-time caller.
Appreciate it.
I'm fully vaccinated, but I'm a hard no.
Hard no. Okay.
I feel that if I'm fully vaccinated, I'm fully protected, and I feel like that's the vaccine's job. It's doing its job for me. So like my wife's not vaccinated, and that's her choice. But for me, I'm fully vaccinated, and I feel like that's there to protect me.
Okay, thank you, TJ. All right, thank you for all your calls. The final score on this one, a record-breaking day on the Talkback Hour, is 18-15. Yes, on vaccine mandates. The Prime Minister's news conference coming up shortly here on City News.
FM in Smith Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, October 6th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 13 degrees. It's 10 in Smith Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It appears the federal government is ready to require all federal employees to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Just waiting for the Prime Minister, in moments from now, expected at the podium, to be announced by Justin Trudeau that it will likely take effect by the end of this month. Now, this would also apply to employees in any federally regulated workplace, air and rail passengers, possibly even federal employees who work from home. Confederation Line is closed for an indefinite period, and the city is escalating its legal dispute with the builders of the troubled line, issuing a second notice of default. But one city councilor is pushing that even further. Here is City News reporter Chris Curries.
The notice of default is the city's official mechanism for claiming that Rideau Transit Group has failed to live up to the contract between the two parties, and in a letter said that RTG don't seem to appreciate the gravity of the situation. Catherine Mckenney adds that it's a necessary first step, but it must go further, and a judge needs to get involved. And they have varied levels of support around the council table to make that happen.
I have had conversations with some of my colleagues who have got concerns and have reached out, and we've had good discussions. Whether I've been able to change their mind or not is, I don't know that today.
A heated discussion is expected to take place 1 week from today at City Council. In the meantime, Mckenney says they just want to know what's wrong with the trains and what went wrong from day one. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time 11:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, some fog patches for some, otherwise sun and cloud today, the high 21 degrees. Tonight, a few clouds, some more fog patches, 8 for the low, and tomorrow, sun and cloud, another warm day, 21. That's the high today, 21.
And right now, it's 13 degrees in Ottawa, 11 in Smith Falls. All breaking news this hour, a story we told you about this morning. A Toronto teacher has been found not guilty in the drowning death of a 15-year-old student on a school canoe trip in Algonquin Park. Nicholas Mills was charged with criminal negligence for allowing Jeremiah Perry to go swimming without a life vest on. Perry was a non-swimmer. Again, that teacher found not guilty in the drowning death. The province says there are 476 more cases of COVID today, along with 14 deaths. Of the new cases, there are 23 in Ottawa, 5 in Eastern Ontario, 2 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases today in Renfrew. The case numbers come from over 39,400 tests completed. The positive rate is at 1.7%. It appears a popular scam to get your cash has extended to the job market now. Ottawa police sending out a reminder about the scam. You're sent a check and told to forward a portion of that to another address. By the time your bank tells you the check is no good, you've already sent money. Police say this is hitting the job market now, with people offered a fake job and asked to transfer money. Police suggest if you are suspicious, you should contact the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre online, and if you're a victim of a money scam, you should file a police report. And there's an instant millionaire in our region. OLG says Lisa Boyce of Ottawa played encore on an Ontario 649 ticket, make that Ontario 49, and matched all the numbers. That buck investment netted her $1 million from the June 19th draw. Lisa says she checked her ticket at a store, said it had a big win, so she pocketed the ticket and went to another store, thinking she won $1,000. When the big win sign came up again, a person in line said that meant at least $250,000. She says the next thing she knew, she was on the phone to OLG with $1 million receipt in her hand. She calls it the most wonderful, emotional, and surreal experience of her life. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So any moment now, we'll join a live news event. It will be the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. And Mr. Trudeau will unveil that vaccines will be mandatory for all federal public servants that if they refuse to be vaccinated, medical exemptions allowed, but if they refuse to be vaccinated, it will be unpaid leave for those workers. This is a huge story nationally, but a massive local story. I mean, we're the capital city. This is a policy that impacts tens of thousands of workers. It's a policy that was leaked to the media last night. And it says unless a government worker has a medical exemption, if they're not fully vaccinated, they will be put on unpaid leave. They will not be collecting their paycheck from the government of Canada. It was a big wedge issue during the election campaign. Mr. Trudeau said he was going to do this, and it looks like he is going to do this. He's going to announce moments from now, if you work for the federal government and you are not fully vaccinated against COVID-19, you will not be going back to work. You will be placed on unpaid leave. And then, in addition to that, there's kind of a theme this morning. You have the public broadcasters reporting this morning, the 4 unions at the municipal level pushing back against the city of Ottawa's mandatory vaccination policy. City workers here in our town could also be placed on unpaid leave or could even be fired if they refuse to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. So you have locals of the Amalgamated Transit Union, 2 of them, and locals of CUPE, 2 of them. CUPE representing healthcare workers, the ATU representing transit workers. They're going to fight this policy on charter grounds. On charter grounds. My rights. My rights, my rights, my rights. And we keep hearing that, right? No, I should not. We heard it in the last hour during our talkback hour. No, I should not have to get a vaccine. That's against my rights. And we'll see if that's the case. You could make the case that that's the case, and you could make the case that that's not the case. And that is why we have judges to make these determinations, to decide and rule on these very complicated issues. And I believe the judge will have to weigh in on this. Maybe many judges at the Supreme Court of Canada, for example. And we'll find out, in fact, if it is an infringement of an individual's rights, like conscience rights. Here you have a government. We've been down this road a few times already in the last year and a half with the pandemic. Because you have a government that once again is moving to bring in a public health measure to deal with a pandemic. And on the face of it, it would appear to violate our rights. Okay. Yes, it would. Section 2 rights, Section 7 rights in the Charter. Section 7, for example. Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice, the famous Section 7 of the Charter of Rights. Well, if I can't say no to a vaccine, do I really have liberty, right? That would be one of the arguments that you could make. Then you have those fundamental freedoms that are outlined in Section 2. You have freedom of conscience, religion, freedom of thought, belief, opinion, expression, and so on and so forth. How free am I if I can't refuse a vaccine? But are those freedoms non-negotiable? Are they absolute? And the answer in charter terms is no, they're not absolute. Because you have Section 1 of the Charter. So important, they put it first. And it's always been controversial. Probably as controversial as the notwithstanding clause. Section 1. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society, end quote. Now, don't you think all of those words were chosen very carefully? Reasonable limits. See, the Charter experts have told me, sure, Rob, you have freedom of conscience. You can be a conscientious objector to vaccine mandates. But that freedom is subject to a reasonable limit. As long as that reasonable limit can be demonstrated and justified. Demonstrably justified. Don't you see where we're headed here? This mega clash is mandating a vaccine in the workplace a reasonable limit to place on an individual's freedom, say an employee's freedom, an employee who might refuse to be vaccinated because they think, whatever, it's tyranny, any of the reasons that you heard in the last hour. It's ineffective, it's tyranny. There might be a microchip in there somewhere. Okay, we didn't hear that in the last hour. Maybe if we had another hour to take calls, who knows? But that's the case that the lawyers will have to argue for and against. And then to make that case, they're going to have to do what's known as the Oakes test, which we've talked about before, and we've had charter scholars on the program to explain it to us. I don't really have time to get into great detail about the Oakes test again. But we've been here now a few times. You know, this morning it's vaccine mandates. We've been here. The clash of personal freedoms versus government regulation in the pandemic era. We've been here on travel bans, right, David? Interprovincial travel bans. Hey, they're closing borders. They're putting cops on bridges. On lockdowns, on the Quebec curfew. All of these issues have come up. And it's good that they come up. And it's good, it's healthy that we can debate these. I would say it's even good and healthy that it's debated in a court of law. If a government is going to say, you must do this, and if a government is going to say, you can't do that, and it's clearly a violation of a charter right, which so many think a vaccine mandate is, well, then the government better be able to make a pretty compelling case as to why its public health policy is justified. It is going to have to demonstrate that it is a reasonable limit on personal freedom. 11:14, Rob Snow Show. Be back with the Prime Minister's news conference here on City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background that comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous, and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks, and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Okay, still no sign of the Prime Minister. Called the media together. They're all there. They're all waiting to hear the Prime Minister outline his vaccine mandate for the federal government workforce and federally regulated industries. And it appears as though he is ready to go now. Do we have our feed of this? David Smith, our producer, is tapping into our news conference right now, featuring Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, and the Minister of Finance, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Live news event here on City News.
And ensure a robust economic recovery. Since the beginning, our government has committed to do everything necessary to help Canadians weather this crisis. We have covered a lot of ground over the past 19 months. Scientists have carried out incredible work to create and replicate vaccines against COVID-19.
To have enough doses of COVID-19 vaccines for every eligible Canadian to be fully vaccinated. And the vast majority of Canadians have stepped up and done the right thing. Around 89% of eligible Canadians have received one vaccine dose, and around 82% of eligible Canadians have received both. So please, if you haven't received your shots yet, please do so as soon as you can. And if you have any questions about the vaccines, please talk to your trusted healthcare provider. The evidence is absolutely clear that vaccines are safe. They prevent the spread of COVID-19. They significantly reduce the severity of cases. And most importantly, they save lives. They also allow our businesses and workplaces and schools to reopen and to stay open. Our absolutely strongest and most important economic policy continues to be a strong public health response, and that very much includes making sure all eligible Canadians get vaccinated. That is how we avoid further entirely preventable lockdowns. To fight COVID-19, our government has taken historically unprecedented action. We shut down our economy and we closed our borders. To support Canadians and Canadian businesses in this unprecedented fight, we have invested over $289 billion to provide income and business support. That is a lot of money, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. Now, we have a tool that will allow us to finish the fight against COVID, to keep our economy open, to keep our kids in school, and to let all Canadians get back to work. Vaccines. We absolutely must use this tool, and we will. So today, we are announcing 2 strong new mandatory vaccine measures. Let me start with the first. Federal public servants in the core public administration must be fully vaccinated by October 29th. This will apply to those who work in the federal government's various departments, the RCMP, Correctional Services of Canada, the Canada Border Services Agency, and many other offices and agencies. We are taking this step to protect those who work in the federal public service, their families, and their communities. This measure also protects everyone who does business with the public service, whether it is getting access to your benefits at a Service Canada office or safely traveling across our borders. Members of the public service who are not fully vaccinated or do not disclose their vaccination status by October 29th will be placed on administrative leave without pay as early as November 15th. Aujourd'hui, nous annonçons.
Today, we are announcing 2 new mandatory vaccine measures. Firstly, federal public servants in the core public administration must be fully vaccinated by October 29th, with very limited exceptions. These measures will apply to those who work in the federal government's various departments, the RCMP, Correctional Services of Canada, Canada Border Services Agency, and many other offices and agencies. We are doing this to protect those who work in the federal public service, their families, and their communities. Members of the public service who are not fully vaccinated or who do not disclose their vaccination status by October 28th will be placed on administrative leave without pay as early as November 15th.
Crown corporations and agencies to implement policies that mirror those we are announcing today. The Chief of Defence Staff will issue a directive mandating vaccination for the Canadian Armed Forces. And we are working with employers in federally regulated workplaces. Les sociétés et
We are also directing Crown corporations and agencies to implement policies that mirror those we're announcing today. The Chief of Defence Staff will also issue a directive mandating vaccination for the Canadian Armed Forces. And we are working with employers in federally regulated workplaces to ensure that vaccination is a priority. As the #1 employer in the country, we want to ensure that the Government of Canada sets an example and establishes a vaccination policy that protects everyone's safety. Furthermore, our government was re-elected to implement this key initiative.
We also know that some parts of Canada are today facing a very difficult fourth wave of the virus. And there are sectors of the economy that continue to struggle. These responsible, practical, and tough actions we are announcing today will protect Canadians, prevent our healthcare systems from being overwhelmed, allow our children to continue to go to school, accelerate our economic recovery, and give businesses, including those in the hardest hit sectors, confidence that our strong economy is less vulnerable to COVID-19 related further lockdowns. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
I'll pass it over to the Prime Minister to talk about other measures that we're announcing today. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Christia. Comme Christia l'a dit,
as Christia said, we have covered a lot of ground against COVID-19. With millions of people fully vaccinated, Canada is a world leader on vaccination, but our fight is not over. Since August, we have been working to implement vaccination measures that will ensure your safety and the safety of your family. These measures will also allow you to resume your favorite activities. Today, we are fulfilling two of our main commitments: mandatory vaccination for federal employees and mandatory vaccination for travel.
Christia has outlined what the mandatory vaccination that's in place immediately for federal employees will look like. The bottom line, proof of vaccination will be required by no later than the end of this month for all federal employees. And by mid-November, enforcement measures in place will make sure that everyone is vaccinated. This is about keeping people safe on the job and in their communities. And the same goes for the second commitment we made, mandatory vaccination on travel. By the end of October, everyone 12 or older on a plane or train within Canada should be fully vaccinated. There will be a short period where people who are in the process of getting vaccinated can show a negative COVID-19 test, but by the end of November, if you're 12 or older and want to fly or take the train, you'll have to be fully vaccinated, as will staff.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing the vaccine mandate. Full details coming up at 11:30 from our City News team, and then we'll take you right back to this live news event here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
1310 AM.
This is Wednesday, the 6th of October. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, mainly sunny, 16 degrees, 13 degrees in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Breaking news from the federal government requiring employees to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The core public service, including the RCMP, correctional services, and border agents, must be vaccinated by October 29th. Those who refuse will be placed on administrative leave without pay by as early as mid-November. Air and rail passengers within the country will also need to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Stay with City News for the latest on this developing story. One Ottawa City Councilor says while heading to court over the LRT is a good first step, getting a judicial inquiry would be even better. Catherine Mckenney renewing the call for a judge to investigate what went wrong with the East-West O train. The motion will be debated at next week's City Council meeting. A swimmer has been rescued from the Ottawa River. The swimmer was in distress this morning near the Britannia Yacht Club. Crews rescued the swimmer and brought the person safely back to shore. And Ottawa police are warning you about a scam involving fake job opportunities. It involves telling you you have the job, they send you a payment, but ask you to send a large chunk of it to someone else. The payment then turns out to be fraudulent and you're out the cash. Police say no reputable employer would ever ask you to use your own bank account to send money. City News Time 11:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Back to a live news event, Prime Minister's news conference. They're now taking questions from reporters. The first question was from the CBC. It was about the Tofino trip on the first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, and the Prime Minister says it was a mistake to travel on that day.
For Canadians to reflect on reconciliation. I'm happy that I was able to speak with Chief Casimir of Kamloops to offer my apologies and to commit to visiting the community in the coming weeks.
And did anyone advise you not to do it?
I think the how it happened is far less important than that it happened, which I regret, and we will continue to do even more on the path of reconciliation, whether it's continuing to eliminate long-term boil water advisories, whether it's making sure that there's better investments in housing and support for kids going to new and better schools across the country in Indigenous communities. There's much work to do, and I am committed to doing it.
Hi, Prime Minister. Mercedes Stevenson, Global News. This question is for both you and for Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland as well. Last night, the military announced that they were removing Major General Peter Daw from his position in providing a review of external reports into sexual misconduct in the military judicial system. This was a decision that was greeted with horror by victims of military sexual misconduct, the original decision to appoint Major General Daw to that position. There's a feeling that senior leadership in the military is not getting it months into this. Ultimately, the military reports to the civilian authority. So first, your reaction to General Daw's appointment and then unappointment, and also when will your government take action to address this externally?
I think, first of all, like so many Canadians, I was stunned and dismayed to see the media reports about this particular role. It is obvious that despite the work that the military has done, despite the work that we've done, the military still doesn't get that survivors need to be at the center and the unique priority of everything in regards to sexual misconduct and harassment in the military. And this shows they simply still don't get it. We have an awful lot of work to do. We know that, which is why we've brought in people like Justice Louise Arbour to look at how we completely transform the military culture and the way our Canadian Armed Forces operate. But this is, again, a reminder of just how much work there is to do before people understand within our armed forces that survivors need to be at the center of everything they do.
Honestly, I was shocked to see the news about the new position and responsibilities of this individual, it demonstrates that despite the efforts, and there have been efforts within the Canadian Armed Forces, they still don't understand that survivors must be at the heart of all of their actions on resources, listening, and learning. And it's obvious that they're not there yet. There's a lot of work to be done. We obviously will do our share, and that is why we asked Justice Arbour to be involved in the matter and to make recommendations on how we will transform not only the interior structures of the Canadian Armed Forces, but also the deep culture, which, despite all of the work that the media and Canadians expect, that I expect, despite all this, has not been done yet.
Minister, thank you, Mercedes, and thank you for your dogged pursuit of this story. Look, I actually want to start by saying to Canadians, but also directly to people in the military, that I really recognize the incredibly hard work people in the Canadian Armed Forces do every day and how much we all rely on them. And I thought of that a lot in the spring of 2020 when we relied on the Canadian Armed Forces as a final line of protection and defense for our seniors in Quebec and Ontario. And I'm thinking about it now as someone who is so worried about Alberta. I think you probably are too, Mercedes. And knowing that the Canadian Armed Forces is there is so important. So I do want that work not to be overshadowed, and I want to say to all the people doing that work, we recognize it. Thank you very, very much. But I also think your question was exactly right. And you said, Mercedes, that it seems as if the leadership just doesn't get it. And I think that's true. I think the reality is there is a systemic problem with the treatment of women, the treatment of sexual harassment in the Canadian Armed Forces. It is clear that there is a toxic culture there, and it is clear to our government, as the Prime Minister said, that that needs to change, and it will. It's not fair to everyone, but especially to the really brave Canadian women in uniform who go to work and serve every day. And like every single woman in Canada, they should not have to work in a place where they face this kind of a culture and treatment.
As a follow-up, what kind of person do you think you're looking for the next defense minister? A lot of people don't think that Minister Sajjan should stay on, given the number of things that have happened under his tenure as defense minister, and last night's reversal just being one of the many. So I don't expect you're going to tell us who the defense minister is, but what are some of the characteristics you're looking for in that next defense minister?
As you know, we will be naming our cabinet later this month. And the reflection that goes into every single job in cabinet is who is the right person to serve Canadians, who is the right person to fulfill the high expectations that Canadians across the country have for this government in all of our priority areas. And I can assure you that there is serious reflection going into every single role in cabinet.
Sir, you made vaccine mandates a central part of the campaign. Can you explain in this policy why you feel an attestation is good enough as opposed to demanding proof of vaccination, which is currently the policy at restaurants in Ottawa, just a few blocks from here?
The attestation for the public service is the first step with severe consequences for anyone who is found to have been misrepresenting themselves in that attestation. And we are putting in place significant processes to ensure that those attestations are in fact real. But I will turn to Minister Freeland on that.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the policy is, as of October 29th, if you want to work for the Government of Canada, which means the people of Canada, you have to be fully vaccinated. The Canadian public service is vast. We are Canada's biggest employer, and so a system needs to be put in place to verify each person's status. We're starting with an attestation so that we can have a hard deadline of October 29th. The reason that there is that period until November 15th before the action of someone being put on unpaid leave is taken is to give managers time to be sure that each case is dealt with correctly. But I also want to say one thing which I think can get lost in some of the coverage of this, and that is the vast majority of Canadians are doing the right thing. And I think as Canadians, we have to remember our country is doing remarkably well, both when it comes to having the vaccines available so people can get vaccinated, but even more importantly, the vast majority of Canadians across the country are doing the right thing, are getting vaccinated, 89% with at least one shot. That is fantastic. And I really want us collectively to bear in mind, this is about the majority doing the right thing, and it is about government taking action on behalf of that majority who spoke in the election to be sure that a minority of people cannot sabotage Canada's economic recovery and cannot allow the fourth wave or other variants to cause real problems for us all.
In the tech briefing, we were told that the audits would be designed by the individual government departments. Can you tell us how rigorous you expect those audits to be? And are you prepared, as we've seen in other jurisdictions, to potentially lose thousands of public servants over this policy?
It's very straightforward. If you want to continue to work for the public service of Canada, you're going to need to be fully vaccinated. And the way to ensure that happens as quickly as possible is to allow for the vast majority of Canadians and public servants who are vaccinated to make a simple, straightforward attestation to the reality of their vaccination status. That allows managers and departments to focus in on those people who will not. Anyone who lies on their attestation will face severe consequences, and there will be verifications done over the following weeks to ensure that everyone is vaccinated. But this is about recognizing what so many public servants and Canadians have already done, which is getting vaccinated in order to keep themselves and their colleagues and their fellow citizens in their communities safe. And that is what we recognize with this particular approach.
We recognize that it's important.
Okay, David, thank you. So this is more, I think, keeping in line with the reporting that was in the National Post a few weeks ago, as opposed to some of the leaks to the media last night and the published reports in the news this morning. When it comes to mandatory vaccination for the public servants, core civil servants are going to be required to sign an attestation, according to our parliamentary correspondent, Cormac McSweeney, who is following this briefing right now. That is different than having to show a proof of vaccination, like a vaccine passport or the receipt you received from when you were vaccinated, a paper copy or what have you. Cormac is reporting that on the mandatory vaccination for public servants, core civil servants are going to be required to sign an attestation. They will do that through an online portal, department by department, to confirm their status. So it will go, I, Jane Doe, employee number, da-da-da-da-da, hereby affirm that I have been fully vaccinated. Click and you submit it. Okay, but you don't have to attach your proof of vaccination, as some employers do. Some employers say, please take a photo of your vaccination card or receipt and upload it here and da-da-da-da-da. Some employers are doing that. That's not what's happening, at least in the interim, with the federal government. The workers will not have to provide proof of vaccination, but the government says you can provide if your manager asks you for a proof of vaccination, you'll have to provide it, and a manager will be able to ask for that at any time. And what's going to happen over several weeks is there will be audits in all the departments. And Mr. Trudeau said those who have misrepresented their vaccination status will face, quote, severe consequences, unquote. 11:46, Rob Snow Show, City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store, a popcorn machine was in there, he didn't want it, I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. And to see our brand name, Papa Jack, and Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come in to the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. Sometimes people, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
Well, Mr. Trudeau is still taking questions from reporters, so let's stick with this.
Narrow, specific,
live on City News,
and to be honest, somewhat onerous to obtain. The goal is to make sure that everyone who can chooses to get vaccinated. We will, of course, work with, as we are with Health Canada, on defining those medical exemptions, on other partners, on other exemptions. But let me say that simply having a personal conviction that vaccines are bad will not be nearly enough to qualify for an exemption to that.
And for managers, it won't be obvious to say, well, his religion really prevents him from being vaccinated and this other person no. Why are you allowing managers to be the ones to decide? Answer, no, on the contrary. The directives that we will share in the coming weeks, well before the deadline of end of October, will be extremely clear on the accepted exemptions, but I can tell you now there won't be very many. It will be very difficult to obtain, and it is a responsibility that the government will take to be very clear on the matter so that it is not on a case-by-case basis by airline operators or managers in various departments.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau, Olivier Ferrand.
Good morning, TVA. I'd like to come back to Tofino. Why did you lie on the itinerary? What message is being sent? Answer, there was no lie. It was said you were in Ottawa. No, the itinerary said that I had private meetings and I had calls for a number of hours that day with survivors of Indian residential schools. In that case, I would like to know what responsibility do you take for the fact that at the end of this first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, you were talked about more than reconciliation? Answer. Obviously, in my speech the night before to launch the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on the Hill, I spoke about the need for all of us, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, to focus on what happened in Indian residential schools and to understand the truths of the past, but also to be present for healing and to build better for the future. That's also what I heard from survivors who I spoke to throughout the day. We all have work to do, and I assume my responsibility to do better in the future.
Prime Minister, by the end of the month, it's going to be up to gate agents at airports to scan people's proof of vaccination visually. And they have, of course, a patchwork of different systems right across the country because your government has failed to produce a national standard. When are you going to create an app that can be used right across the country that people will be able to show show their proof of vaccination?
A couple of things on that, Glenn. First of all, as you know, it is the provinces, as the deliverers of medical services, who have the information on citizens as to who is vaccinated, who is not, and with how many doses of what. The federal government doesn't have that information, and quite frankly, for privacy reasons, are happy to not have that information, which is why we are working with provinces across the country on proofs of vaccination, and we are working to standardize them so that they are available to people to travel internationally in a unified format that will allow for that. So we know that the work that we're doing right now with provinces across the country on proofs of vaccination will be beneficial for restaurants and gyms, but also will help for international and domestic travel. In regards to the gate agents, I can tell you that the work that we're doing with the major carriers in this country is to integrate the proof of vaccination digital codes into their online booking process so that when you print out your boarding pass, either at the airport or in advance, there will be a clearly marked proof of vaccination thumbs up or check mark so that the gate agent does not have to be checking documentation. That's part of the work we're doing with the air carriers, because we know that the more than 80% of Canadians who've done the right thing, who've gotten themselves vaccinated, who have the proof of vaccinations from their provinces, don't deserve to be slowed down in their desire to travel and face more onerous tasks. And that's why we're ensuring that will work as smoothly as possible.
Okay, so when is this going to come? You say you're working with the provinces. In Europe, since the spring, they've had a standardized digital vaccine passport that's multinational, as well as proof of vaccinations within those subnational governments within those countries. If Europe can do it with a much larger number of people and more jurisdictions, why can't you do it here with 10 provinces?
But we are doing it, Glenn. We have this smart health card format that has been adopted in California, New York, multiple other states, I think 20, 25 other states, as well as most of the jurisdictions across this country that are moving forward in a unified format that will allow for people to have that proof of vaccination. As we said, this is an extra responsibility that the provinces need to step up on, which is why the federal government will be footing the bill for the development of those proof of vaccination certificates. We are looking forward to having all provinces be on board with this to make sure that their citizens have the opportunities to travel, to get back to the things they love doing as quickly as possible once they've done what over 80% of Canadians have done already, which is getting vaccinated.
Yes, hello, Mike Blanchfield, Canadian Press. Prime Minister and, of course, Deputy Prime Minister as well, if you'd like to weigh in. Are you going to make it a requirement, or what are your thoughts on having MPs in the House of Commons fully vaccinated and everyone who works in that building, including political staff and not just public servants?
I have been clear that every single MP for the Liberal Party needs to be fully vaccinated. All of our
Look, we're going to have full details coming out of this rather strange news conference, I have to say. A very odd news conference. I'll have more to say on it tomorrow during the Rob Snow Show. Maybe some subtle messages being sent here. But mandatory vaccines for the public service, yes, but it's an attestation. You don't, if you work for the federal government, it's not a proof of vaccination, but your manager can ask you to show your proof of vaccination at any time, and your department will be audited. That is one of the details coming out of this news conference. Many more details coming up during our noon news and then the Sam LaBrade Show here on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays at 9 on
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more